Bună ziua, dragii mei. Well, today I thought we'd have a look at some Romanian culture, or some aspects of it, too, in the main. One of their most famous poets, Mihai Eminescu, died very young, from the last century. Sorry, no, not the last century, the 19th century. And he wrote extensively, wrote one of the longest poems. I think it has about 94 stanzas. And I can't read them because I refuse to read in poetry in translation, because it's just not the same. I'm simply not able to read one of my ancestors' poems, John Kyriok Hughes, who was around between 1832 and 1887 and is regarded as the Robbie Burns of Wales. He wrote, you've probably heard of Ahidinos, All Through the Night, or Men of Harlech. He wrote those, and I can't read his poems either, so that's my loss. One of the most famous artists, sculptors from Romania is Constantin Brancusi, but Brancusi is how we pronounce his name. He was born in a little village called Hobița, just to the north of Târgu Jiu, and came to Craiova and worked here as a dishwasher. And if you go to, there's a restaurant in Craiova called Casa Zamfirescu. If you go there, you can see some of the chairs that he sculpted and decorated for Mr. Zamfirescu, who was the owner of this beautiful house. He then went to Munich, studied art there, and allegedly walked to Paris, where he studied for a little bit with Rodin, but felt he was unable to thrive because Rodin was such a great sculptor that Brancusi felt he couldn't find his own voice working there. His most famous pieces are The Kiss, Princess X, The Bird in Space, and there are three examples of his sculpture in Târgu Jiu itself, all in an equidistant line. The Table of Silence, which is a rather eerie table, meant to represent perhaps the apostles in the Last Supper. The Gate of the Kiss, which is a gate you can walk through. It's luck, good luck, to throw coins on top. And if you're a bride and groom in Târgu Jiu, you will inevitably have your photo taken in front of the gate. And his dedication to the war widows from the First World War, The Endless Column, an extraordinary, beautiful piece that goes up into the sky, and if you stand below it, you feel it has no end. It is really extraordinary. He moved to Paris, met Picasso, was friends with the artistic set in Paris, and remained there, taking French citizenship in the end. And outside the Pompidou Centre, you have the Atelier Brancusi, so you can actually go and see some of his works and his working methods. I talked the other day about Cristian Munchu, who is one of Romania's foremost film directors. He made a very amusing series of short films which he wrote called Tales from the Golden Age, all ironic satires on the Ceausescu era and what people did to get around the problems there. His most famous film is probably the one which won him the Palme d'Or at Cannes. 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days, a harrowing tale of a student who needs to arrange an illegal abortion. Abortions were illegal in the Ceausescu era, and indeed women were paid more allocations for the more children they had, and a bit like France actually as well, where you used to get medals from General de Gaulle for having more children. It's a very harrowing film. It's a wonderful film. I talked about Occident, the West, which is a little bit like Run Lola Run in that it's filmed in from three perspectives. You're watching 3 films within a film, and you don't really understand everything till you've seen all of them put together. And he directed a film called Beyond the Hills about religious fanaticism, and that's pretty harrowing as well. His most recent film is called Graduation, about a doctor who, from Cluj-Napoca, I think, who is determined to play it straight and not take bribes, but is forced by events to change his outlook. No spoilers. Other famous, well, modern directors, Porumboiu and Popescu. Porumboiu, I'd recommend his short film Coffee and Cigarettes. Traditionally, coffee and cigarettes are what you give to people to obtain favours in Romania. And A Trip to the City, which is a very amusing commentary on the country and the difference between the country, La Țară, and the town. Also, Popescu's film The Apartment is an absolutely beautiful film. No words are spoken, but it grips you. Okay, so if you haven't heard of them, have a look at some poetry by Eminescu, some beautiful sculptures by Brancuș. We're very lucky here in Craiova because the Palatul Jean Mihai, which is the Palace of Fine Arts, has six of his sculptures. If you want to see more, you can go to the art museum in Bucharest, and they have more. Cristian Mungiu, Mungiu, and I would recommend seeing any of those. Well, in these dark times, the world leaders were taking a flight, and on the flight was Merkel, Trump, Johnson, and a little 10-year-old boy. And they were worried because the plane was going down and they didn't have enough parachutes. They only had 3 parachutes and there were 4 of them. So Trump says, I'm the smartest person in the world. He grabs a parachute and jumps out of the plane. Johnson says, I need to run the UK. So he takes a parachute and jumps out. So there's only 1 parachute left now between the 2 of them. Merkel says to the little boy, look, I've had a good life. You've got your life ahead of you. You take the last parachute. And the little boy says, no need. There are still 2 parachutes. The cleverest man in the world took my school satchel. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.